Catastrophizing. How do we stop ourselves imagining, fearing, and freaking ourselves out about the worst case scenarios? In this video, I'm going to give you 3 simple thoughts we can use in those moments when we find ourselves fixating on the potential disasters on the horizon to mitigate any anxiety and get control of our responses. I'm Tim Box, and this is How to Stop Catastrophizing. Welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time, I'm Tim Box. I'm a mind coach. For the last 12 years or so, I've been working with people to help them overcome all sorts of emotional and psychological issues, and in particular, helping people to get control of anxiety. Before we go any further, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for mind coaching and anxiety advice videos every week. Catastrophizing is the word we might use to describe the habit our mind sometimes gets locked into of predicting the worst case scenarios. It might apply to everyday things like what might go wrong at work tomorrow, or it might be more about the big picture stuff like war and disease. It might be fears about our own safety or that of a loved one, but it will usually in some way involve us fixating on the possibility of our greatest fears being realized. Our mind's a powerful thing, and in its efforts to keep us one step ahead of trouble, it's capable of imagining all sorts of scary things. But it's important to remember the purpose behind those thoughts are simply to keep us safe, because after all, safety is a huge component part of happiness, and ultimately, it's happiness our mind is trying to steer us towards. So the first thing to say is that catastrophizing doesn't indicate a malfunction in our process. It just means that for some reason we feel vulnerable to possible future events. We feel anxious when we regard something as important, and we feel high levels of anxiety when we feel under threat from it. Now, whilst catastrophizing isn't purely a habit of the modern era, since the internet was invented and we were suddenly connected to every single piece of information and news on the planet, we've become much more aware of potential threats and possible disasters. This means many more of us are regularly experiencing those worst case thoughts. It's why we might decide to switch off the news for a while. It's why we might choose to take a break from social media. Sometimes it's a good idea to limit the amount of information we take in, as it can often just spark our imagination into creating ideas about possible threats that aren't real. It's worth noting that in most cases, we're not getting anxious about what's actually happening, we're getting anxious about what might happen in the future and how well we might be able to cope with that challenge. With that in mind, here are 3 very simple ideas designed to shift your perspective away from the catastrophizing thoughts, calm any anxiety, and put you back in control of your own emotional responses. Worst case scenarios, while grounded in some understanding or expectation of what might possibly happen, seldom actually do. Yes, we might be able to point out times when bad things have happened that were entirely out of our control, and our mind might be using that as evidence of why we need to prepare for something just as random and destructive in the future. But these thoughts come from an unfortunate yet inevitably skewed perspective. We notice when the bad things happen because they are extraordinary. We ignore the much more common times when nothing happens because there's simply nothing remarkable worth noticing about them. But if we stop to add up the amount of times the worst thing happened compared to the amount of times it didn't, we would inevitably conclude that the odds of the currently imagined worst case scenario occurring are probably remote enough to no longer be a factor in our thinking. When we imagine the possibility of something going wrong, we tend to hit a disproportionately loud alarm bell in our mind. The volume of that alarm bell isn't actually based on the thing we are imagining happening, it's based on the ultimate end point if everything subsequently went wrong. If we make a mistake at work, we're not responding to the idea of that one thing going wrong, we're responding to the possible ultimate consequences. What if I get in trouble? What if I lose my job? What if I then can't pay the bills? What if I then lose my house? What if I end up on the streets? And ultimately, what if I die cold, hungry, and alone? The simple truth is that whilst we might feel anxious about a possible worst case scenario, that one step we've taken down the wrong path is very often easily put right. There are many potential interventions, correcting actions, and save points before we end up in the place we're actually afraid of. Yes, the unknown is always slightly scary and nobody likes taking a wrong step, but it's important to remember that the consequences of that wrong step are never as bad as we fear in those highly anxious moments. Always remember, we're not anxious about the thing, we're anxious about our perceived ability to cope with the thing. The reason we often feel unable to cope is because we naturally focus on the things we struggle at rather than the things we handle easily. We barely notice all the amazing things we get done every day, yet we ruminate on the small mistakes and wrong turns. However, in truth, we're doing much better than we give ourselves credit for, and we're also learning and getting better every day. When we see the potential of a big challenge on the horizon, we inevitably judge our ability to cope on the previous experiences of a less knowledgeable and thus less resourceful version of ourselves. Let's make a point of reminding ourselves how much we've actually been through and in some way overcome. The reason we managed to cope with that stuff wasn't because we predicted it happening, we coped because that's what we do. Every day we put out fires, formulate solutions to problems, and in some way handle the unexpected. Perhaps in the light of that knowledge, we have the right to now feel much less vulnerable than we might have in the past, and have a much greater level of faith in our ability to handle whatever life throws at us. Catastrophizing is often referred to as the what ifs. What if that terrible thing happens? It's worth remembering that you already know the answer to that question. What if that worst thing happens to you? Then you'll deal with it. In some way, just like you've always done with every other challenge you've faced, you will get the other side of it. Yes, sometimes things have knocked you down, but you've always got back up, and you're watching this video now because you've decided to keep moving forward. Every day of your life you've had to deal with the unexpected, and that's exactly what you will continue to do. So we could spend a lot of time and energy trying to predict the potential catastrophes that might occur in an attempt to prepare for the worst. Or we could remind ourselves that no matter what happens, the most likely outcome is that in some way we handle it. Guys, I hope this video has been of value. If you have any questions, then put them in the comments below and I'll do my very best to answer all of them. I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you who have subscribed and are liking and commenting on the videos I put up. I really can't tell you how grateful I am for all your help in growing the channel and getting this message out there. I'm also now doing a weekly live Q&A every Friday at 6 p.m. London time, where you can ask me your anxiety-related questions, so please join me for that. But that's it for now. I'm Tim Box, Mind Coach. Always remember to be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.